I've shown Indigenous communities that your concerns, your rights, your treaty rights are a priority.
Tonight, NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh makes a stop in Winnipeg to meet with Manitoba Chiefs.
Well, we had it right before this all started. We signed a paper back in 1752 that says we can do this.
Mi'kmaq fishermen continue to practice their treaty right to fish for a precious resource in the river. And a doctor clears the air regarding what he calls a Facebook hoax. Good evening, I'm Kristen Ashkate. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. Donald Trump has been promising tariffs since he won the election last year, but it has been a winding and worrying path. On February 1st, Trump announced 25% tariffs on Canadian products over his concerns of what he called an unsafe Canadian border and fentanyl, but delayed that move by a month, with Canada promising to reinforce the border. On March 4th, those 25% tariffs went into effect, and Canada retaliated with its own response. A day later, Trump gives the auto sector a 1-month exemption and then suspends the tariffs on items covered by the free trade agreement. On March 12th, U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs came into effect. Then Trump announced 25% tariffs on all foreign-made cars effective today, and now reciprocal tariffs. Prime Minister Mark Carney is now meeting with his cabinet to determine what the latest impact against Canada will be.
For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. American steel workers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen. We have a lot of them here with us today. They really suffered gravely. They watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream.
Federal NDP leader Jugmeet Singh was in Winnipeg today. His itinerary included meeting with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, Grand Chief Kyra Wilson, and the Keewatin Tribal Council. Here's APTN's Sarah Bettens with more.
After federal Liberal leader Mark Carney's campaign stopped in Winnipeg on Tuesday, NDP leader Jugmeet Singh spent Wednesday in the city. When asked for his election pitch to Indigenous voters at an announcement this morning, Singh said the NDP will fight to advance Indigenous rights.
I've shown Indigenous communities that your concerns, your rights, your treaty rights are a priority. We fought to make sure we had the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and now we're going to fight to make sure it's implemented.
The NDP holds seats in several ridings where Indigenous voters have considerable pull. NDP MP Nikki Ashton currently holds a seat for Churchill-Keewatin-Aski, where 75% of residents identify as Indigenous, according to 2021 census data. And according to 2021 federal election data analysis released by the Assembly of First Nations on Friday, that riding also had the highest difference between the number of First Nations electors and the winning candidate's margin of victory of any riding in Canada. Anishinaabe candidate Rebecca Chartrand is running for the Liberals in that riding, and Lachlan Denardy for the Conservatives. Later in the morning, Singh met with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, Grand Chief Kyra Wilson, and the Keewatin Tribal Council to discuss election priorities.
We've been raising our concern about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and how it is a shame in our country that Indigenous women and girls continue to lose their lives, to be killed. We've been fighting to say that the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action have to be implemented.
According to the latest Ipsos polling data, support for federal NDP is at 9%. To maintain official party status in the House of Commons, the NDP must secure at least 12 seats. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And we'll have more with federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh later in the show. In Nova Scotia, the elver fishery season is now open, and that's where Mi'kmaq nations are harvesting elvers under their own management plan without DFO authorization. APTN's Angel Moore reports.
With the start of the elver commercial season, roughly 60 members of the Sipekne'katik First Nation are harvesting elvers under their treaty rights. John Michael is a fisherman from the Sipekne'katik First Nation.
Well, we had it right before this all started. We signed a paper back in 1752 that says we can do this. And one of the things that I find where we need to show support as you can't license a right.
Sipekne'katik, Millbrook, and Member 2 First Nations are united together under their own fishery regulations and management plans, and any seizures or arrests are an infringement of treaty rights. Damon Howe is from the Millbrook First Nation. He said his nets were seized by fisheries officers earlier that night.
And we had the right to self-govern, and Millbrook First Nation started their own plan, and I was following the plan as far as that goes, and they still seize my gear.
The peace and friendship treaties say the Mi'kmaq have a right to harvest and sell natural resources. Amy Maloney came to support her family. Her dad was Chief Reg Maloney. He refused to sign a deal with DFO in the early 2000s.
Because it's a right that is given to us through birth, and it's not something that we can bargain with. It's solid.
The catch for the night was low. The rivers are still cold and the elvers stay in the mud to keep warm. But it is a learning experience for the youth of the community to fish under their treaty rights.
As we've always been strong, we've always stayed true to what our elders set in place for us, and we will back it up. And I find if we don't do it, then what are we setting up for our grandkids?
The Department of Fisheries and Oceans confirmed to APTN News no arrests have been made. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Eastern Nova Scotia.
APTN's Savannah Craig in Montreal has been following a recent dispute between the Mohawk Council of Kanesatake and its now former chief and grand chief. Here she is now with the latest on that story.
At a press conference held today by the Mohawk Council of Kanesatake, they confirmed that an ethics commission comprised of non-community members has ousted Grand Chief Victor Bonspiel and Chief Valerie Bonspiel last month. In a phone call with APTN, the former Grand Chief said he would continue serving his community despite the ruling, whether he is paid or not. The Mohawk Council of Kanesatake has informed federal and provincial leaders, as well as the AFN-QL, of the ethics ruling and are asking them to respect First Nations governance. The former Grand Chief has provided APTN with financial documents where he's made allegations against the current Band Council. APTN will follow up with a more comprehensive report. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Kanesatake, Mohawk Territory.
Comments allegedly made on social media by two Alberta doctors have come to light this past week, sparking enough outrage to get a petition going with the intention to launch an investigation and suspend one of the doctors. Joining us to talk about this story is Veronica Blackhawk. Veronica, I understand there are some developments in this bizarre story. What can you tell us?
Thank you, Creason. This isn't the first time two Alberta doctors are receiving backlash over the comments. Someone posted them before in 2021. Hateful comments directed at Indigenous people about residential schools and missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. We now know the viral posts this week were not written by Dr. Laffin or Dr. Tran. The profiles are fake, but the latest posting is causing damage to their reputations for a second time. On Monday, a petition was started on change.org. It got over 5,700 signatures in less than 48 hours. It originally had screenshots and videos as part of the campaign. Now midweek, that petition is closed. The petition has been updated by Hans McCarthy, who identifies as a First Nations advocate. They say new information came to light during a court order from 2021, where Laffin tried to have Facebook release the identity of the account holder, but was unsuccessful. The petition maker, McCarthy, is also apologizing and says they don't want to cause further harm. APTN reached out to Dr. Laffin, and in an email, he said he is unsure why he was targeted and that narratives like this undermine the real struggles impacting Indigenous communities. Laffin said, quote, I will continue to try and identify the creator of these fraudulent posts, and until that time, will continue to openly address the posts whenever they appear, unquote. The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta also released a statement. Shared on April 1st, the college said the comments were made by fraudulent accounts. They launched an investigation in 2021 and say they are making another statement now because it is a serious matter. In a written statement on their website, the college says it's disheartening to see these comments resurface and that racism and discrimination have no place in healthcare. While this was just a hoax, there is still an opportunity to learn from this. Experts say, check the source. Are they reliable? And is there more than one source? While it's rare and hard to prove, it is possible to be sued and held liable for defamation of character, even simply for sharing viral posts. Creason?
4 elected members of the Métis Nation Saskatchewan published a statement this week that says they have been banned from provincial Métis Council meetings. Provincial Secretary Lisa McCollum and Regional Directors Sherry McLennan, Kathy Pruden-Nansel, and Wendy Gervais says they were banned in January after filing harassment complaints with the MNS against a staff member. According to the 4 involved, their complaints was dismissed in February after the staff member filed a complaint against them and an internal investigation found the 4 women were at fault. The women are calling on the MNS to acknowledge the procedural failings in handling their complaints, commit to respecting the rights and dignity of complainants, ensure the complainants are taken seriously and a fair and respectful investigation is conducted, ensuring that all future investigations strictly adhere to policies intended to protect all members, and reaffirm commitment to the safety and respect of Métis women. The statement makes no reference to reinstatement but warns of court action if the conditions aren't met. We've reached out to the MNS for comment, but they have not responded to APTN News. We'll have more on this story in the coming days. NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh is up next to tell us more about the Indigenous issues he wants to continue to push for during this federal election. Stay with us. Welcome back. It is day 11 of the federal election campaign, and NDP leader Jugmeet Singh is campaigning in Winnipeg. Singh's stop in Manitoba comes on the heels of visits to the city with the largest Indigenous population in Canada by Liberal leader Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. For more on the NDP campaign, Jugmeet Singh joins us in the studio. Mr. Singh, thanks so much for taking some time for us. To date, Indigenous issues have largely been left out of this campaign. What are some of the pledges in the NDP platform specific to Indigenous peoples?
Yes, for me, it's something that's very deeply important. I think a lot about how we have a country that's been built, and the first people of this land were historically and currently face so much injustice. And as a part of being proud Canadians, I feel like what we have to do is acknowledge that injustice and fight to remedy it. So some of the things that we want to do as New Democrats, the Indigenous communities across our country, Inuit, Métis, and First Nations, and have laid out really concrete steps that we should be taking. They've said, let's actually respect First Nations of this land, the first people of this land, with adequate housing, healthcare, basic human rights. These should be met. We need to respect treaty rights, something New Democrats believe in. We want to actually see the implementation of all the calls to action that were listed out in the TRC, which lay out really concrete steps we can take for justice for Indigenous people. We also see the heartbreaking ongoing genocide of Indigenous women and girls, and have to put in place all the recommendations so that we can stop that genocide from happening. One of the things that I think really grounds where I come from around how we walk the path of reconciliation in a meaningful way is that the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People is a guiding document for me. It really grounds me in what we need to do. We need to walk together in a path of justice where we are partners, we are collaborating instead of imposing decisions, we work together. Instead of Indigenous communities often being ignored and not benefiting from development in their territories and their lands, we need to make sure that there's a benefit to the communities, that it has to happen with their support and that they actually benefit economically.
Jugmeet, you met behind closed doors today with the First Nation leaders from Manitoba. Can you give us a sense of what you heard in that meeting?
Yeah, they talked a lot about the challenges and what they want to see happen. They talked about infrastructure gaps where a lot of communities in the north don't have access to roads besides winter roads. And so that was a big issue, having all-season roads. And as we talk about the threats of Donald Trump, we've been talking about how we build up a more resilient Canada. Well, one of the things we need to do is build more infrastructure, and I can see all-weather roads is a fundamental part of that. They also talked about, for many communities, flying in and flying out is really the only way to access. So better infrastructure around runways and better equipment so people can fly in and out of those communities is vital. They also talked about the fundamentals like homes, housing, healthcare, the basic fundamental rights that Indigenous people and all people should enjoy, but particularly the fact that Indigenous people have faced so much injustice. We have to remedy that by addressing these massive gaps in funding and gaps in support.
A number of the ridings currently held by the NDP seats held by Leah Gazan, Laurie Idlaut, Blake Desjardins, Nikki Ashton, all seem to be in play in this election. How are you concerned about losing some of those seats and MPs?
Well, I would say to people right now that or any of those communities, you've seen what you get with the New Democrats, someone that's going to fight for you. Blake Desjardins, as you mentioned, Laurie Idlaut and Leah Gazan, folks that represent Indigenous communities that are Indigenous themselves. They've been incredible voices. They've been powerful voices for people. And I would say if you want someone in this election that's going to actually fight for you, fight for Indigenous people, fight for the human rights that Indigenous people deserve, and fight for justice in a fair country, New Democrats are the ones that are going to deliver. We've seen previous governments, they do not act unless New Democrats are there to fight for you. So I would encourage you all to vote for a New Democrat, to have someone that's going to be on your side fighting for you.
Jugmeet, you met with Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew on Tuesday. The Manitoba NDP continued to ride high in polls in Manitoba. Is the provincial NDP throwing its full backing behind you and your candidates?
Well, we've been very lucky to have a great relationship with the Manitoba NDP, and I've had a friendship with Premier Kinew. I thank him for all the great advice that I received, that the meetings that we've had, and we've had an incredibly supportive team. Many of the MLAs were out knocking doors with us during the Transcona by-election, helping to get Leela Dance elected, and we're really thankful for all the support we've received and the support that we're now seeing in this current campaign.
Some polls are predicting the NDP are at risk of losing official party status. Can you explain what would be the implications of that?
Well, I mean, a lot of polls said that in Ontario, the NDP was going to lose party status, and they formed official opposition. So I don't know if those polls really accurately gauged New Democrat support, but I do think this is an important election. And I want folks to know that wherever you are, if you want someone that's actually going to fight for you, not for the big CEOs and huge companies and the billionaires, someone that's actually going to put you and your family first, someone that's going to put Indigenous rights as a priority, New Democrats are the ones who are going to do that.
And finally, Jugmeet, should the Liberals regain power, would you be looking at a new coalition agreement?
Well, I've said that I'm running to win as many New Democrat seats as possible. If people give me the honor of being Prime Minister, I will work every day to fight for fairness and justice for you and your families. And so that's my goal. That's what I want to do, elect as many New Democrats as possible. I can say concretely that New Democrats will never support a conservative Pierre Poilievre Prime Minister, and we will always use our power to fight for you and your families to get you the most support, the most access to the resources and the dignity that you deserve as possible.
NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh will have to leave it there. Thanks so much for talking to us in studio today.
Thank you.
APTN News did reach out to the Liberal Party for an in-studio interview with Mark Carney while he was in Winnipeg on Tuesday. The party said his schedule was too tight to accommodate the request. Stay tuned, we have more news right after this. Thanks for staying with us. It's time now for our photo of the day. A clear blue sky in Quebec brought Leah outside with her sister and brother and some neighborhood kids to climb all over the snow-plowed snow, all under the supervision of Mom, of course. Thanks for sharing, Chelsea, and for keeping those little ones safe. Send us those pictures to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on east, Charlottetown 0, Halifax rain in 1. Cartwright -8, La Grande River -6. Saguenay 3, Val d'Or 12. Ottawa 17, Toronto 19. Wawa 8, Sioux Lookout 2. -6 in Puckatawagan, Thompson 0. 4 in Gimli, Winnipeg 4. Yorkton -1, Estevan 1. -8 in Stony Rapids, Buffalo Narrows -6. Partly cloudy and high level at 1, Fort Chipewyan -4. 1 in Lethbridge, Edmonton -1. Campbell River 12, Vancouver 12. Sandspit 10, Smithers 11. -4 in Old Crow, Dawson 5. Norman Wells 2, Fort Simpson 3. Tuktoyaktuk -9, Palatuk -6. -16 in Chesterfield, Arviat -9. And Clyde River -21, Agulik -26. Before we go, make sure to tune in tomorrow on our noon show for a special guest. Up-and-coming Lakota hip-hop artist Stella Standing Bear will join me for an interview. She's making her mark in the hip-hop community. Her debut single, Home Runs, reached #1 on the NCI FM Indigenous Music Countdown on Sirius XM Radio. Definitely check that out. And that's your evening newscast for this Wednesday, April 2nd. We're back again for your daytime newscast tomorrow. Please join us then. From our reporting staff from across the country and from our HQ in Winnipeg, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again. Ekse.